Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's ESA webinar sponsored by Access Communications. We're going to give everybody just a moment here to sign on. It looks like we have many of you here with us, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. I hope you're having a great day, and welcome to today's ESA webinar. The webinar is titled Hosted Video and Cloud Storage, Is It Secure? And it's sponsored by Access Communications. I'm Jillian Bateman, ESA's Chief Development Officer, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. In our session, we're going to talk through the common concerns of hosted video and cloud solutions you should be aware of, along with tips to help you choose a secure solution and review the benefits hosted video solutions deliver. We're going to dive deep into the content in just a moment, but first, just a few notes for you. All callers will be muted for the duration of this session. At any time, feel free to ask a question by clicking into that panel of your control panel. We will be fielding questions at the end of today's session with our expert presenters. We will be recording today's session as well. You will receive an email after the session with a video to watch this webinar on demand and share with other employees at your company. It will also be featured in tomorrow's edition of the ESA Integrator newsletter. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you today's experts. Wayne Doris is the Business Development Manager of Cybersecurity at Access. Wayne drives Access's cybersecurity strategy by generating awareness, influencing IP solutions, and creating demand. He joined Access in 2005 and has 25 years of experience in the security industry. Mike King is the Manager of Hosted Video at Access. He is responsible for the day-to-day management of Access Communications' hosted video program in North America to expand Access's presence in the hosted video marketplace. King joined Access in 2016 and has 25 years of experience in the security industry. Wayne, take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll be covering on our agenda today common concerns of hosted video and cloud solutions. There's a lot of buzz out there about hosted solutions and cloud. We'll talk about, is it secure? What if the link goes down? We'll talk about concerns of a hybrid cloud, of managing on-premise or also using cloud to extend your enterprise. Talk about alarm integration with the cloud. And as always, we're here to help explain and offer tips and questions you should have if you ask any provider that you're looking for providing a video hosted solution. And of course, we're going to talk about benefits. We'll talk about reduced TCO, hybrid and on-prem VMS, and what about access to video and how it can also help extend for disaster recovery. We'll also go over tips throughout the presentation that you should pay attention to. And we'll talk about reasons for benefit of a hosted cloud solution. So quickly, we're just going to go over a quick set of terms. These terms are probably more applicable to the way that we see it at Access, but this way, throughout the presentation, you won't see that we won't get confused with the terminology. A cloud, a remote location that stores information, which is your data, in this case, video. And often this gets confused with the term hosted. Hosted is actually the application that runs on the cloud, and that is a managed security solution or the engine of the platform and its devices. And then we'll talk about central station. Like we say here, sometimes it's referenced as alarm centers or alarm monitoring, or in today's age, video verification. And it's a company that provides monitoring services for you. They may also do burglar alarm or fire alarm systems. With that, we do have a couple of poll questions, so we're going to do two of those really quickly up front. And then once we get done with that, that will help us kind of guide the way of the rest of this presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm back. You're going to see a poll question pop up on your screen, and we want you to answer those in real time. Are you familiar with Access Communications? Yes, no, or are you unsure? The second question is, have you implemented a managed service for video in the last 6 to 12 months? We'll give you just a moment here to complete that. So Wayne, it looks like 95% of today's attendees are familiar with Access, and 46% of them have implemented a managed service for video in the last 6 to 12 months.
Okay, perfect. That lets us know for the audience, and that's a good thing to know. So we're going to go through some common concerns of hosted video and cloud solutions, perhaps. Don't know why this isn't advancing. There we go. So common concerns, data privacy. Where is my data exactly? Who has access to my data? When you're implementing a cloud solution, of course, now that your video is not on premise, where is it going physically? And then also who beyond my administrator for the cloud service who also has access to my data? A lot of that we will talk about. The provider that you choose, a lot of that information will be disclosed in their SOC 2 report about who they manage access to the actual physical data center, and you can get all that information on that, usually contained out of that report. We'll talk about data loss, what happens locally if the connection is down, where is the recording going to happen? Do you have a separate NAS that you're going to also have as a backup, or are you going to do this with SD cards, depending on your implementation? Vulnerabilities. One of the things that I think highly gets overlooked is the fact that now that you have a cloud implementation, that you actually have extended your attack surface to an area that's no longer beyond your physical enterprise. And so, are you more exposed to a DDoS attack or a distributed denial of service? The answer is in general, yes. The reason being that your application is probably going to be hosted along with other applications, so you may not primarily first think that you are the actual target, and you actually may be collateral for somebody attacking a different application that happens to be hosted on that cloud. Back to data privacy, again, with many enterprises, with the passing legislation of GDPR, if you are supporting a customer across the globe that has the EU involved, then yes, you're going to have to deal with GDPR issues.
Hey, Wayne, Wayne, I hate to interrupt. I'm getting a lot of messages that says nobody can see the slides.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's saying all they're seeing is your name in the center of it.
Oh. I seem to have the slides here, so I don't know.
Yeah, I see them. I don't. Jillian, any suggestions?
I see them. Let me try to share my screen.
Some people can see it. I just. Well, a lot of people can see them. Several people can't. I'm not sure why.
It looks like many can see them. I see them. You should have two windows here. One, your window with all the slides. The other will be the window to ask your questions.
Just move forward, Wayne.
Okay. So I'm on slide 3, talking about, data privacy. A lot of this may impact a process from a legal perspective called e-discovery. This is typically where there's a litigation going on, and in the past, investigators were pretty common to know if they needed access to a video system that they went on-prem and got the data that they needed. Some of this becomes a little more of a challenge, although most cloud providers now provide the ability to do e-discovery with the cloud, but it is a good question to ask your cloud provider. And back to the administrator credentials, again, you're going to want to keep that very secure, and you want to know who actually from your cloud provider, beyond just your admin locally, who also has access to get into your account from that perspective as well. So now we're going to talk a little bit about tips. Tip number one, robust vulnerability scanning and security controls. One of the advantages that cloud solutions provide as a whole is the ability that they run vulnerability scans on incoming information. Compared to an on-premise vulnerability scanning that may happen once a day or sometimes every couple of days or at a week at the most, that most IT departments will be doing internal scanning, the cloud actually does it on a much more frequent basis. Many cloud services will do this every other hour, every 2 hours, every 3 hours. And where they're getting that from is from the CVE database, which is, you see lined out there, the Common Vulnerability and Exposure Database that is published from NIST. The other thing to keep in mind is that, again, we talked about clouds hosting a lot of other different services. So at times, their firewalls will be detecting a lot of traffic coming through, and they will also be linked with attacks that are in concert with the Department of Homeland Security and their National Cyber Center. So they may be getting threat intelligence information from other sources and be able to see this data coming in and being able to stop and run scans more frequently than you would on an on-prem scanning. Ensuring your firmware is up to date. A lot of people think that once I get my application into the cloud that it's kind of like the set it and forget it, that that's what they do. The important thing to remember here, the biggest takeaway, is to know that you still have to do vulnerability scanning on the device, and you do have to patch the firmware on the camera. And you can check with different hosted providers. Some may provide this as a service, that they will also not only keep vulnerabilities up to date on the cloud application, but they will also may offer this service to do it for the firmware of the actual devices. Some may not. So we'll talk here on tip number 2. Actually, I'm going to go back to tip number 1 real quickly. The CVE is actually as part of that CVE, it will be given what's called a CVSS, a Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And this is what lets the IT administrator know that either this vulnerability, is it a very critical vulnerability? In other words, is it escalating privileges? Is it shutting down the application? Is it getting access to other parts of memory on the processor? So it's usually given an index of, is it very quickly to turn into an exploit, and does it cause a lot of damage? In that case, that would have a high CVSS score. Whereas if it's just a minor bug with the code, it may be a very low criticality, but it also still may be very easy to implement. So they kind of take those two scores together, and that's how they determine prioritization on whether or not this is something we need to quickly patch now, or if it can wait until it gets into our normal patch cycle. Again, kind of to tie off on the same line of thought, that a lot of people seem to think that once I put it in the cloud that I don't have to do so much on the on-premise. But actually, What is more ideal is the ability to line up either your company's information security policy still in place for all those devices that are sending data to the cloud. Some of these things may be HTTPS, which version of TLS you may be running, whether or not the device has FTP or SSH on or off. And other these may also be discovery services, such as Bonjour or Universal Plug and Play. And the biggest thing that I tried to come back here is to understand that really the camera is just a computer with a lens. So we still have to apply all the same security controls or mitigations that we would locally on-prem to the device, even though it is sending it up to the cloud. Now, one of the other benefits is that most cloud providers will require you to send it encrypted, and that is smart because it is outside of your enterprise. And the benefit of that is because we already have a certificate in place, even if I web into the camera locally, that will still be on a secure connection. So tip number 3, the solution should be fully encrypted in transit, in storage, and at the local site. The reason for this, obviously, we do want to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. You want to ensure that if you are sending your video data to a managed service, that it is actually getting to there and not a fake service that somebody has intercepted your data. And by doing encryption, it allows us to do that. The other thing is, in the event that your main bandwidth pipe to the cloud goes down, you definitely still want to ensure that you have encryption on that backup NAS or backup SD card, just to ensure so that nobody can take that data and then be able to see it. You want to make that encrypted as well. And the tip here is, obviously, we're using 2 different keys. Each, the cloud service and the device, have a public key, and then they each decrypt with their private key at each end. But this is an important tip that sometimes gets overlooked, particularly for the aspect of what happens in the event that I lose my connection to the cloud. This kind of ties in what I was talking about previously, device authentication and certificates. You're going to want to make sure that whatever solution that you're looking at provides a way for providing this infrastructure for you. You will want to vet out the certificate authorities, how those are accomplished, how that works for that particular solution. The other thing is, when they're creating these certificates, it helps because it helps provide non-repudiation, meaning that I know that this device is the one that is actually talking to the cloud service. Typically, in part of the certificate creation, there are some unique identifiers with the device itself. It may be the version of firmware, the OS, a MAC address. And a lot of times when you're working with your cloud provider, you can work on what information is going to be included with that. But you definitely want to make sure that whoever you're selecting also has a process for this. You don't want somebody to have spoofed your camera's MAC address, copy the certificate, and then have that information going where you don't want it as well. So there are lots of different cloud services, and in general, they do offer similar security control sets. The challenge for most, even the best cybersecurity teams, is managing those controls on multiple different cloud services. And it also opens up the possibility of, if a IT team has to manage multiple cloud services, to again take those same policies and ensure that they are lined out with every one of those cloud applications. So A lot of times if you're in the process of trying to select a cloud hosted service, you may want to check with your IT department first, just to ensure what cloud services they are already implementing. If they're already implementing Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, Google, whoever it is, it may help you to make it easier for them if you choose a cloud provider that is also on the same service. They'll understand how those controls are implemented and also understand how to set those up. And if not, they probably would want some heads up to know that if you are choosing a different cloud provider, they're going to want to, the information security team there is going to probably want to understand the security controls for mitigation as well from the new provider. As pointed out, for the most part, these are pretty common. There's even started a new sector of software that helps cyber teams manage multiple cloud services and ensure that policies are set across all of them, even though the controls are slightly different. Some of these services are provided by Fortinet. There's multiple others out there, but this is something that you just want to be aware of in the back of your mind. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Mike King, my counterpart, and he will talk about Access Guardian and some of the benefits and features of that.
I will. Thank you, Wayne. And as I had suspected, I'm in Oklahoma and a storm's coming through and I've lost internet and power. So I will talk to what I remember being on the slides, and if you could move it along. Access Guardian is the hosted video solution for Access Communications. It is a true cloud-based managed service platform, and when I say true, there's no appliance needed, so you don't have to have anything on there. All you need is a supported access device and the internet. Now you can do an SD card, and you can do like a companion recorder to put it on site. It's got a PoE switch built into it. Goes up to 4 terabytes. You can do that if you want to have local recording along with the redundancy of going to the cloud, but you don't have to. So all you really have to have is a supported access device and the internet. So it also gives you accessibility to the web and mobile apps that we have for this for the end customer. I don't know what slide you're on. If you could go to 13, Wayne.
Okay.
Like I said, it's got the ability to do live and recorded video, redundancy to the cloud. We have multiple streams that come out of our cameras, so you can do a hybrid and have some to the cloud and some to the edge. We support our ACAPs, our Access Analytics. Video Motion Detection 4 comes on all of our cameras. People Counter and Perimeter Defender are separate, but they can be added on. You just load as an ACAP on the software onto the camera itself. And then there's some other things in our P and Q series models that have built-in motion guard loitering, things like that. We do have the edge storage with SD cards up to 128 gig. As I mentioned, the companion recorder as well. Going to the next one.
Got it.
Okay. One of the things to remember, this is an end-to-end access solution. So, and we manage the platform as well as our own devices. So we do all, Wayne had talked earlier about making sure you check for cybersecurity patches and firmware updates and things like that. Access handles that with Access Guardian. We take care of all the firmware updates, cybersecurity patches. We enable the Guardian service providers to do health monitoring, or the alarm dealers themselves to do health monitoring. So we take care of the heavy lifting on the back end. You don't need any specially trained, IT trained installers. And we also have integration for the Alarm Central stations. So like for video verification, or if someone wants to, if they're using hosted video as as a tool for operational things, and then they want someone to watch it after hours, we can hook that up to one of our partners for central stations, and they can handle that and take a look at that as well. I can talk to, it's difficult with no internet, and I don't know where we're at right now, but you can reach out to me directly, and we can do a demo after on a separate thing. So move on to the next one, and I think it's back to you, Wayne.
Yeah, it's back to me. We're actually probably going to go into a little bit more technical information here about how the way Guardian works with certificates, different ports that we would need open. This will be a little more techish, but if this is helpful, I think it's good to get this information out here. One of the things that Access helped pioneer was one-click functionality, and this came from some of our predecessors even before Guardian. And really what it is the ability for the user to click one button and then have that camera automatically get through the firewall, link up, and talk to the cloud service. This one-click functionality has actually been greatly improved from a cybersecurity perspective for Guardian. And what it is, and we had talked about perhaps a little earlier, in part of our firmware, there's a little bundle of code that actually help this along. There is a client application that actually runs on the camera, and then there's a server application that runs up on the Guardian service. Even all initial communication, there is a default certificate that's built into every Access camera. And initially, so this way, even initial connections are already encrypted from the beginning, and they are secured with TLS version 1.2. And then what this is, the device actually calls home. So all connections to the Access Guardian are initiated by the device. This is one of the ways that we know that we're just not getting random connections from some other piece of equipment. There are some checks and balances that go through with this. And the nice thing about that, the traffic is very firewall friendly. Typically things are going to be on port 443 anyway for HTTPS. Doesn't require any port forwarding or VPN to the site. And there is support for an HTTPS proxy between the device and the Guardian service. And on our actual camera, there is a user interface for doing advanced configurations depending on the requirements or the IT requirements, and particularly the perimeter or firewall requirements. And that also is accessible over the Access Guardian cloud solution. So next here kind of talks about the certificate process, the ports that we kind of talked about. The two primary ports are, of course, port 443, which is for HTTPS and or 8080. And there is a peer verification, so there is talk going back and forth between the device and the cloud to verify this. And we'll talk about parts of that is, again, when the certificate is created, we actually have what's called an OAK certificate or an owner acknowledged certificate. And that's what the information that we use to help create these certificates. And again, so what happens is the device actually, before it connects to Guardian, goes to our dispatcher service, and that is its own certificate authority, and it issues certificates for the actual device. So the cloud doesn't actually issue the certificates for the device. We have a different, in this case, a dispatcher service that does that. And then once the device then talks back to the cloud, the Access Guardian system has its own certificate authority that issues certificates for the servers of where this device will be talking with. And it's important to understand that Access Guardian already has a trust built in to trust the certificates that the Access dispatcher has already created. And then at the end, once Guardian trusts the device with a certificate, it's signed by the Access dispatcher. So there's kind of see that peer verification going back and forth there. And again, once the device has been one-clicked, it connects to the dispatcher and it waits further instructions as part of the certificate and signing process going back and forth. And that kind of brings us to the end of the technical part of the presentation. I think we have time for questions. But do we read questions or do I see questions?
Thanks, Wayne. Thank you for your presentation. As a reminder, you can type your questions into the control panel and we'll field them to the experts. We'll give you just a couple moments here. We have one question here, Wayne. Can you please elaborate on the people counter solution?
Sure. So People Counter is actually an analytic that is used for business intelligence. And the primary application for this we see a lot in retail, where people want to, or I should say, the business wants to know how many people came into my store today. And so with People Counter, you can set up at an entry-exit point, and it will count people coming in and also the people going out, and that will give you the day's count. We have a lot of back-end reporting analytics that can also correlate that data, say for instance, with time of day and then also with weather. So that's an important one. A lot of retailers want to know, well, why did I have less traffic this Wednesday in Oklahoma? Well, like my counterpart, Mike King, would tell you, probably not a lot of people are out shopping when it's really rainy. But they have this allows the business to get the intelligence to understand, well, this is why I had less people in my store that day. Or if I know that we just ran a promotion for a sale, we wanted to see how much more traffic that generated versus what we would have on a normal day. So they're actually able to tie that data back into what they're doing with marketing. And so People Counter, the way that it works, it's an ACAP, and that stands for Access Camera Application Platform. And so what that is on the camera that's covering the entrance, we load that little piece of software, and then that little piece of software provides the metadata that gets collected by, in this case, the store reporter, and then that allows a third application to manipulate that data and correlate it. So that's what People Counter is.
Thank you. We've got another question here. When integrators are working with smaller companies who don't have a dedicated IT team but are interested in these solutions, what do you suggest they focus on in order to provide them with the best value for Access products?
I'm going to let Mike answer that one. Sure. And I actually have power back up again, so I can see that from pretty much when you're working with a smaller company, you know, IT, the bandwidth is an issue. I can tell you that we have one of our demo sites, we have 19 channels, 19 cameras on a school that only has 3 meg upload. Because we use our ZipStream technology, it cuts the bandwidth needs more than 50% back. So just making sure that you get the right cameras for the right fit, find out what they need to see, and go from our supported devices list, and you can pick the right camera that way.
I'll tag on here just to say that that's one of the benefits of the last part of the presentation where we were talking about the one-click functionality, that even if a store owner doesn't have a full-time IT staff, setting this up so that it will automatically work through their store's routing equipment is very easy, and that's what makes this solution very attractive.
Okay, gentlemen, we have another question here. Are the cloud hosting fees available on the Access website, or where would they go to get that information?
I'll field that one, Wayne. only sell to a select group of Guardian service providers. So you can contact me and I can get you in touch with one of the Access Guardian service providers. We have about 5 central stations across the U.S. and we have about 7 Guardian service providers across the U.S. You know, depending on your application or what the focus is for your company, we can have those discussions. So we don't have MSRP because the market is too immature to really see that. You can go online and find 7 days of continuous recording for anywhere from $10 to $180. So it's all over the place. So we don't have MSRP.
If there are any other questions, feel free to ask them in your control panel. I don't see any for the time being. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the presentation today. It was a lively one. I think we've got a lot of great interaction and feedback here. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us. And again, the webinar was being recorded and is being recorded and will absolutely be sent to you after you hop off of this webinar.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Access. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.